Alright YouTube, it's time for another Sochi Olympics video. I know I talked briefly about the, not the actual topic, but related topics earlier, but I had been holding off. I had been holding off talking about the various problems that are going on at Sochi for several days now, because they were more minor issues. Of course, the hotels not being finished. Apparently, the water, at least in one of these hotels, is tainted with some sort of chemical, or the water is simply not filtering properly. People who have stray dogs living in their hotel rooms, and the Olympics are set to start basically now. But these were all lesser issues. But I think there's a systemic problem at this site. And it may have something to do with the fact that, and not to insult Russians or people from that general region of the world, but I've actually spoken to, because I went to UVM, people who have worked in that part of the world, and they openly admit, and the people living over there in some cases openly admit, that the entire structure of society there, perhaps because of communism, because of severe famine, for so many years, for some reason, the entire societal structure relies upon at least low-level corruption. Essentially, people will screw you over a little bit here and there, and it's almost an expected behavior. Of course, at the Olympics, we've got stories now because of a whistleblower that millions and millions of dollars that was supposed to be used on site is being embezzled. And this would be a problem in any country. There's always embezzlement that goes on at the Olympics. It doesn't matter whether it's held in the United States or Russia or Brazil or wherever else it might be held. But there seems to be a systemic problem at this site. You've got the manhole covers that weren't marked and weren't closed. You've got the stray dogs. Now there's outcry about that by animal rights activists. Of course, in Russia, they don't give a crap about that stuff. There seems to be some sort of systemic problem with the construction going on at the site. The TSA has just come out and said, well, we're going to ban gels, aerosols, and toothpaste and fluids and stuff on any flights going to Sochi, coming from the United States. That's a great idea. There are several problems with this. Number one, it's possible for somebody to take a flight from somewhere within Russia. There are plenty of militants already in that region who would be more than willing to go blow themselves or others up at Sochi. Number two, the TSA is the same organization that a few years ago got into deep, deep trouble, and there was a lot of criticism of the TSA because they were unable to find, most of the time, by the way, legitimately explosive-looking packages that were being deliberately fed through by the media. The news crews were doing this. These reporters would go in, and they would take a package that was made to look deliberately like an actual explosive, and they would put it through all the TSA scans and stuff, and it would get through. 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't catch it. People have gone through TSA checkpoints with knives, with loaded pistols, with assault rifles, with all sorts of stuff, and we're expecting that the TSA, by virtue of banning these things, is really going to make a difference. People are still going to take these things through the checkpoints if they really think they have something to gain by doing so. They're going to take them through the checkpoints, and most of them will not get caught. That's the way the TSA operates. The criticism of the TSA has been they are completely ineffective at their job, and this new strategy they've got of, oh, we'll be on the lookout for people who are acting funny or whatever, doesn't work. It's worked no better than simply having layered security in the past has worked. It makes no difference. I personally don't think that Russia is capable of fully guarding these games. I think that what's going on in the site, the banter that's coming, look to Saudi Arabia, again, as I pointed out, the Saudis and all of these other groups, I think it points to impending attack at the Sochi site. Certainly, if I knew somebody who was planning to go to Sochi, I would tell them, you should not go to this venue. Not because I don't care about, yeah, I support gay rights. I don't care that Putin is saying, well, we're going to, criminalize open homosexual, quote-unquote, propaganda or behavior in public or whatever. I don't care about that. It's their sovereign nation. If they want that, they'll deal with it. But certainly this site cannot possibly be considered safe. The conditions, even without taking terrorism into effect, the conditions, the construction on this site is so haphazard, you'd think there could be problems with electrical wiring, with fuel lines, with things like that. Any of these hotels could just suddenly burst into flames. They're being apparently built very poorly, very quickly, with as little monetary compensation for the workers as possible. And by the way, people are pointing this out. Some of these people who are going to Sochi to work as construction, or whatever, a trucking or cargo movement or any of these other things, they're not even getting really background checks. These people could be criminals, they could be extremists, they could be generally untrustworthy individuals you don't really want in a large-scale venue, perhaps, handing out drugs or blowing things up or attacking people or doing any of a number of other things. That's a recipe for disaster. The security at this site is rather haphazard, or so it seems. Of course, I'm not in Sochi, but I can see through the journalist's eyes what they're seeing, and what I'm seeing is unsafe water, cramped and completely unsuitable living conditions for the athletes and for the guests. The guests will probably be even getting worse. I'm seeing they're mobilizing units of horseback Cossacks, or Cossacks, Cossacks, rectal joke there, rectal humor. But they're mobilizing these horsemen who still, by the way, they apparently carry sabers around to guard the Olympic venue. I'm not sure why they're doing that. It could be nationalism, which is fine. If they want to show off their Cossack legions, then that's actually pretty cool. I think that's one thing that could make the games pretty epic. But the other possibility is they're short-staffed on actual trained security. A lot of these Cossacks, they're not even actual members of the military or anything. They're sort of, in the West, we'd probably refer to them as strong-arm thugs that are loyal to only the Kremlin. Over there, they would probably say they're patriotic people's militia. That's a debatable point, makes no difference. But you've got to wonder if there's a security shortage here. There's an Israeli firm, by the way, and this is perhaps the most worrying. Well, there are two things that are really worrying. The number one is the Saudis. Because the Saudi Arabians have already tried to blackmail Putin to say, basically, give up Syria and there'll be no problems at Sochi. And openly stating to Putin, we control the Chechens. We control the fighting Islamists, the rebels over there. So Saudi Arabia is obviously going to be a problem. One of Saudi Arabia's closest allies is Israel. Number one, due to proximity. Number two, they pipe oil through that region. The Saudis and the Israelis get along pretty well, which is weird because the Saudis are a theocratic monarchy in many ways, and the Israelis are a Jewish theocratic state, or I should say an ethnic state. It makes no sense when you consider the rest of the Islamic world's views towards the Jewish people. It's clear that the government and the people of Saudi Arabia have different views on this topic. But an Israeli firm is handling the surveillance and security on site. Not sure who greenlighted it. It was a Haaretz article. It was taken down. The archive was taken down. I saw the archive before it was gone. For some people, for some reason, it still comes up. For many people, it's inaccessible. But the Dabu77, who I don't necessarily agree with all of his Illuminati New World Order bullshit views, but I will agree with him. There is something very strange going on at Sochi right now. There's something very sinister almost. It almost sounds like somebody scripting an attack from an insider point of view. Now, of course, Putin, he's a complete nationalist. Russia first sort of KGB person who probably does believe in Russian supremacy. So I don't think he would be involved in any sort of false flag on his own people. But you've got the Saudis. They've got a reason to do it, basically to punish them for not giving up Syria, where the Alawites are supposedly oppressing the Sunni people, when in reality they're trying to maintain secular order. The Israelis are another thing to watch out for, because again, this article disappeared quite mysteriously and now has been switched with another article that doesn't quite say the same thing, and no one's really sure why the article is taken down. Haaretz is Israeli friendly. It's a Jewish online news source. why would they then take down an article that originally was basically bragging about how good the Israeli security was on this site? Then it starts getting noticed by people who either they're anti-Semitic or they understand Israel has a bone to pick with Russia right now and has every reason to screw them over, uh, and the Saudis too. And then all of a sudden this article disappears, and it just doesn't sit right with me. I won't get into all the combined disaster, Sochi Clock Tower, 2/11, February 11th, mumbo jumbo, because of course, usually those predictions are wrong. What is clear, though, is that this site doesn't appear to be managed properly. It appears to be a site that's in some level of disrepair and malregard to the safety of the athletes, the guests, and all of the people who come to Sochi. It looks like a recipe for something to go wrong, and they've killed several of these Black Widow suicide bombers and so forth, which is good. The less that are there, the better. But again, they're still catching these people. They're still finding caches of weapons. They're still getting verbal threats on various videos that are being posted online. Somebody at some point has to say that they're worried, and there was one intelligence analyst, and I don't have the link, so I can't provide it, but you can probably Google it and find it, who said it's probably not a matter of if Sochi gets attacked, it's probably a matter of how badly it gets attacked. As though it's almost a foregone conclusion that someone's at least going to try to attack this venue. Whether it be the Chechens, some Lebanese national, or some Saudi national or something, somebody will probably attack this site. For what purpose? Probably to punish Russia for supporting Syria. And they're basically trying to sow discord. And then it only becomes a matter of, do they succeed, and how many of these people are involved, what kind of backing, what kind of weapons, what type of attack they pull off or attempt to pull off. That should worry people that are headed to the Olympics. Why would you want to... I know the Olympics are a big thing, and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people go to see them every single time that they're on, and it's a big thing, and it's an international event of peace and harmony, supposedly, but right now it's in shit. This is the most divisive since the games in Nazi Germany, basically. But why would you want to open yourself up to the very real possibility of an attack? People who are going there are almost suicidal. It's almost like they're pouring people in there saying, don't worry, please, because we don't want to upset the status quo and tell the terrorists that they've won. There's a difference between a general feeling of terror and fear. Like, I don't go around fearing that I'm going to suddenly be shot by a terrorist. But then again, I don't go to the Olympics. This is a very large public event with a lot of people from all around the world. There are politicians there, there are ambassadors there, there are top athletes there, Putin will probably be there. All of these people will be here. They're all targets. Potentially speaking, if the Chechen rebels or the Saudis or Israel or any of these other groups that have a reason to attack the venue, if they wanted to sow worldwide discord, all they have to do is send a few explosives into Sochi and hit it right during the opening or something like that and kill perhaps thousands of people from all around the world. It wouldn't be limited to just Russians. It'd be people from everywhere. Again, the proper response, if there is an attack, is for the entire Western world to solidify and hammer these people back to the Stone Age, whoever's found ultimately responsible. That's my opinion. It's not a popular opinion because it sounds genocidal, even though it's not. But that's what I believe. And I believe that it's likely Sochi will be attacked. Again, no clue how that... it could be anything from one of these crazy Black Widow women blowing themselves up to someone fires a missile into the park or something. Who knows? But I think it's unfortunately quite likely that there will be an attack here. People who are going there should be very careful, or not go. That would probably be... And you're going to get bitten by a stray dog probably anyway. You get rabies or something. People are crazy for going to Sochi right now. It's not going to be friendly accommodations anyway. Especially for Americans who... whenever they travel abroad, they tend to get the whole fat American pig thing, even if they're, not assholes, but that's just kind of the way it works. But really, the Sochi Games look like they're going to be a mess. It's unfortunate because the Olympics, the original meeting was sort of an international brotherhood. People could get away from the bad politics and the fighting, if only for a few days, just to enjoy themselves and compete in a way that doesn't involve bloodshed. And here are these crazy Chechens and Saudis and other groups saying, we're going to smear blood all over the Sochi Olympic grounds. It's rather sad. Peace out.